Hey, and welcome to TrainWorld Fun. In this video, we're going to talk about this Tomix N-scale Thomas and Friends train that has Thomas, Annie, and Clarabel, where I got it, where you can find it, who made it, and we're also going to talk about what are they talking about when they say N-scale, or HO scale, or HO gauge, or N gauge, or O gauge, or G scale. What does all that mean? Stay tuned to find out. So I haven't given any really good up-close shots of this. This is made by Tomix. It's a Japanese company, I do believe. And they're the only ones I know of that have made anything Thomas and Friends that is N-scale. There are plenty of companies that make N-scale products that are really high quality. In fact, the track here is Bachmann Easy Track N-scale. Did a video where I got this. I got the track basically so I could have something to run Thomas on, because most of the Tomix sets do not come with track. In fact, I think all of them are just Thomas, Annie, Clarabel. I think there was a Henry with some passenger cars. There may be some others. I really don't know a whole lot about it, but it does have all that funny print on it from Asia on the boxes. I did not get a box. So let's look at it, and then let's go ahead and tell you where I got it. I got this on eBay, and that's where you can find most of them. You're not going to find these on Amazon or places like that. If you live in Japan, you're probably going to have more access to it. Most of the sellers are overseas, although I did get this from a U.S. reseller, somebody who probably had it in their collection, either outgrew it, didn't want it, needed some cash, and they sold it. The prices, I've seen them as sell for as low as maybe $60, all the way up to $300 for one that's sealed in the box. But generally you can find these between $100 and $150 that have all three of these characters here. But if you're patient, you might find it even less. All right, here is Thomas. Now the couplers, those are the kind of the standard couplers. They're not to scale, and we'll talk a little bit about scale and gauge and all that kind of boring stuff in a bit, but these are N-scale style couplers. And here's what Thomas' face looks like. His bell is white. He doesn't have the little things on the front here like they do on the O scale and the HO scale. And I'll uncouple him from Annie, let you see the bottom. See what that looks like. Let's turn around where the printing is, where you can see it. Made in China, so I was wrong. I guess, well, everything's made in China these days. It's Tomy Tomix. And it's got the copyright information there and some hair that it's picked up. I don't know if anybody actually saw the listing I bought from. There's like a big clump of hair right in front of the picture. Like animal hair or something. So I thought that was kind of funny. But I have not cleaned this. I was so excited to get it. I just went right with it once we got it. Let's put it back on the track. Get you the side view of it. And then see what he looks like on the back. And then of course here's Annie. Ooh, that typical expression we see on a lot of the Annie models. And then of course Clarabel, who seems more happy. Guess she's not right in the exhaust of Thomas. So that's what they look like up close. Not as much detail in N-scale, but you know, it's not bad because they're so tiny and they're hard to stay on the track. Oops. So Mardi Gras Man 23 asked, are we going to explain what we mean when we say N-scale, HO scale, O scale, and G scale, and then gauge? I don't know if he didn't actually word it that way, but basically the first toy trains were like this size, and G scale is more kind of a standard, I think. I don't know a lot about it, but G scale, I think the G actually stands for the gauge, just G. And then O was 0 gauge, and it was a little bit smaller than this, the G scale. So they called it 0 gauge, but that got kind of changed over the years to O gauge. And to clarify something for you kids, gauge is how wide the track is. Scale is how it compares to full-size real trains items. So for instance, a lot of you know that we're getting an N-scale Scolari, or however you say his name. He's going to be actually in scale on the track, but it's going to be HO gauge, because he'll be the equivalent of what Thomas would be in HO, but he runs on narrow gauge track, and that's where the N comes from. So O scale is 0 gauge, where they change the 0 to an O. HO is half O, which means it's half the size. In fact, these little trains almost fit on the track. And if you have a narrow gauge O scale railroad, it would have the third rail there and would fit there. And N scale is basically narrow gauge equivalent then for HO. So it is half the size basically of HO. So that's where all that comes from. So again, to clarify, O scale, 0 gauge. HO is half, the gauge is half, the width of the tracks between the rails, is half of O, and N is narrow gauge, half of O, or HO, excuse me. So anyway, it's all confusing, and if you really want to get more into it, there's all kinds of variations of scales and gauge. But just remember that when we say N scale, HO scale, O scale, G scale, we're talking about the comparison to reality. When we talk about gauge, we're talking about the width of the tracks. Did that all make sense? Good. We're not going to run the trains in this video. We've done that much, and I'm dizzy from the last one. So if you have any other questions, if I didn't say anything, or if I said something that didn't make any sense, ask a question. If I said something that's wrong, please kindly let me know in the comments below. We got more Thomas and Friends stuff coming, so you want to subscribe, stay tuned for that. We got tons more trains to show you here. The channel is TrainWorld Fun, because trains are fun. Thanks for watching. Little Thomas thanks you.